How y'all doing? For this video and the next two after this, I'm going to review a trilogy of books that takes place in the old Dungeons & Dragons campaign world of Dark Sun. Alright, so many of you already know about this. Of course, many of you don't, especially after over 20 years. This came out, I believe, in 91, early 90s. And Dark Sun is a Dungeons & Dragons campaign during the second edition run. And basically, it is a fantasy that went through an apocalypse. It's, instead of nuclear bombs destroying the world into a barren wasteland like this, it's through destructive magical forces. In Dark Sun, magic is used in two ways: the Preserver method and the Defiler method. Preservers are, magic users who, when they cast a spell, the energy for that spell comes from plant life, and as they cast it, they absorb the life energy of plants, and that powers up their spells. But they do it in such a way where the plants still live through it, and they can regenerate, and and the world and the land can recover. So hence why they're preservers. Then on the other hand, there's defilers. These are people who cast magic and just take it from a smaller area and it sucks up all the life energies, killing all the plants and leaving the land into a barren, sterile ash area. So, and it's through wizards and spellcasters who practice that destroyed the known region of Athos, which is the world of Dark Sun. It destroyed that, made the area a nice wasteland that you play in. Water is scarce. There's no oceans. There's oases, and there's some forested areas, but it's a very harsh and savage, barbaric world that you play in, which is the appeal about that. Sure, you have villages and you have your tribes running around there, but most importantly, there's the city-states, which are like Tyr, Rom, Gulch, Nibene, and several others, each ruled by a sorcerer king, which are defiler mages. And in fact, they're pretty much the main villains of the Dark Sun world. So, what's the deal here? Okay, now, and it's a very interesting deal of it to play here. And I'm going to try to explain the background of this story, the Dark Sun world, because it will make sense if you ever decide to read this trilogy, and what have you. The sorcerer kings that rule the city-states, they're powerful mages that are on their ways of while they're ruling the city, they're trying to advance their own power by by conducting a special ritual and changing their bodies into full dragon forms, and to get power. If you're game-wise, you can find that out here in the Dragon King source book. This tells you how you turn your character from a 20th level, which is normally the highest in most Dungeons & Dragons, and on your way to level 30, you could the step-by-step process of becoming a dragon, like one you see here. So, the Sorcerer Kings, in some form, are in their early stages, and there's a picture in this one that gives you an idea what the character could look like as it progresses from level 20 to level 30. As you can see here, you see as a normal human, but as he takes the first ritual, he continues on, he keeps changing more and more to a dragon until it reaches the highest level 30, and there you go. It's an option when you play the game, and the Sorcerer Kings in this are in the early stages of this, some more advanced than others. Now, there's also preservers who reach that level can change as well. They become beings called the Avagians, which I will find here. Let's see. Here we are. This is a preserver's equivalent of this. He starts off as human down here, and as he progresses, he becomes more or less human and sort of this weird angelic, kind of hard to describe. Never tell what an Avagian is, but it's a long and arduous process to become either one. And of course, these two are bitter enemies. Now, the Sorcerer Kings are characters that have their own stories in the world of Dark Sun. But according to this book, at least the time it came out, it says there's no known Avagian that they know of. This trilogy that I'm about to go through talks about one who's on his way, but knowledge of where he's at is kept secret, because if the Sorcerer Kings know about him, then they can try and attack and stop him before he finishes his transformation. Right, so now if you're familiar with the Dark Sun universe, you're probably more familiar with the extended fiction of the Prison Pinhead series. And it's not surprising that the D&D, whenever they make a campaign world that's that can have any sort of popularity, they make fiction for you to read and enjoy and to inspire yourself to how your game could be played, more or less. Now, most of you are familiar, if you're familiar with Dark Sun on the shelves at all, you're probably more often see the Prison Pinhead series, a series of 5 books that introduces people in the Dark Sun world, and it tells you. It has some major events that afterwards changes a lot of games, the landscape about it. Not necessarily literally, but usually 5 books, as you can see here: the Verdant Passage, the Crimson Legion, the Amber Enchantress, the Obsidian Oracle, and the Cerulean Storm. Now, it's not necessary to read this 5 books before you read the Tribe 1 trilogy, which I'm trying to review here, but it can help. But it gives enough in the backstory of this trilogy to where you can follow along without it. Now, with all that background aside, hopefully that's enough to give you all an idea of what Dark Sun is like, and I can start the review proper. All right, here we go. Okay, so the first book of the Tribe 1 series is The Outcast. This series is written by Simon Hawke, and it is the story of the main character right here. His name is Sorak. The story begins with a powerful being called a Pyrene, who's one of those beings that's trying to do her best to help change Athos back into the world of the green, and by doing so, they have to eventually get rid of the powerful sorcerer kings in the city-states and others who will probably practice their ways. Well, she's on her pilgrimage on top of a mountain, and as she does so, she hears a cry, not an actual vocal cry, but a psychic cry. See, on Athos, in the world of Dark Sun, about every living being has its own potential psychic talent. So whether and some of them can practice their ways to become full-blown psychic characters, or they may not know what their ability is at all. But a lot of people, everybody has their own potential. So, after that digression, I'm going. The Pyrene hears this psychic cry and tracks it down, and what she finds is this lone child, nearly dead, about 6 or 7 years old, not telling, and with him comes this little, green tiger-like cub called a Tygon. A very dangerous animal once fully grown, but this one is very protective of him. And sticks with him wherever he goes. And it's interesting because she picks it up and she reads this child's mind. This child has a high potential to be a powerful psionicist, person with psychic powers. So what she does is she takes the child, and Tygon Cup follows him. She takes it to a small little secluded village, all run by women. This little covenant of women called the Velici. Velici are women born with powerful psychic abilities, but at a young age they become kind of troublesome. Their parents don't know what to do with them, so other Velici of this go on a pilgrimage and hopefully find some, and they take the child off their hands and raise them as their own. They train them to hone their psychic abilities, train them to fight, and teach them the ways of the Preserver and Druid. They're a small group of people that's trying to help out and, bring the world to a better place whenever they can. Now, it's exclusively women, their chase, but they're going to make an exception of bringing this child in, hopefully to raise him as, and to hone his abilities and, help him survive and see what they can do. So some of them were reluctant at first, but the leader reasoned with them that, this guy, he'll learn our ways. And there's also another thing interesting about this child. They looked at his features, and he's not human at all. He's what they call I think it was an elfling. He's half elf, half halfling. It's a weird combination. I mean, you have the mules, which are half dwarves, half human. You have the half elves, of course, which are human and elf. But elves and halflings are two races that do not get along. They're bitter enemies. So that's a curiosity. This character, this young child, is a crossbreed between two, and eventually, as he wakes up, he has no memory of his own past. So he's now brought in and the Velici, readily accept him. One in particular is a young woman about his age named Rihanna, who at first they had a sort of brother and sister relationship, but it grows a little bit further, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So, Sorak is the name he is given here. It's an elf word for nomad. And as a young boy, he's trained and tried to be educated, and so in his course of his psychic training, the Velici elder tries to have him move stones with his mind. Well, he can't do it, and then when he sort of gives up, something happens, and then they move on his own. And then, so what happened was that they found out someone else is moving him, someone else in here. And they discovered a new feature about him. Sorak is not one personality by himself. He has several of them, and see that's why it's called a tribe of one. He has several. Basically we call multiple personality disorders. They call it a tribe of one. And so they find out these are personalities, and I've written them down here. And the personalities are either are named by their role or have an actual name. The personality that moves the stones is the one that's actually psychic. Sorak has no psychic abilities, but the personality of Guardian does. The Guardian is the sort of a mother figure that actually serves as a guardian, watches out for him and all that, and she's the one that confronts the Velici elder. What are you doing? Why are you making him go through this? And she's like, look, you're gonna have to let him grow and all this. So after conversing with the Guardian and others, they kind of agreed to let him train in all this and make the tribe work together. So you have the Guardian. There's another personality is the Watcher. Very observant, hard to very misses little. So this personality makes it where very few can sneak up on Sorak. There's Lyric, who's a sort of childlike personality, but very good at singing songs and plays any musical instrument that he gets hit a hold of. There's Ranger. A Ranger is that he's a very silent, I don't recall ever speaking about this, but he is a very skilled ranger, can work the landscape, tracks, what have you. There's Iron. Iron's this cynical type of personality, but type of person that questions everything, usually pessimistically, but he was very good at when they come up with a plan, he'll find questions that make it so where how would this go bad sort of situation, so we know not to go through it. So he's used for there. Curvana, also kind of a childlike personality. This is a female personality. This one has a curiosity for everything, wants to try any sensation that she can, and gets a little problematic when she doesn't get what she wants. There's Shade, a very dark, powerful fighter that when he's unleashed, all hell kind of breaks loose. He's very difficult to defeat. There's Screech, which is a personality that doesn't speak, but it has a very primal sense to where this one can can try and communicate with animals, understands the animal mindset, very useful in time to time. There's Kether, who they're not even sure if Kether is an actual personality or a being that's inhabited Sorak, since his mind was broken into this tribe of one when he was lost in the deserts. He just doesn't quite feel right. It's like he's not one of the personalities at all, but a very powerful psychic in of his own right. There's also the inner child, which nobody wants to delve much into. So finding out these personalities, they train Sorak to not only hone whatever psychic abilities he has, but also trains him, as an expert fighter, teaches him ways of the land, and to follow the path of the Preserver and Druid. Now, as he grows up, about 10 years or so into this, him and Rihanna comes close, and after practicing, they were alone and washing up. Rihanna wants to confess her love for him. Now, love's not strictly forbidden, they're a celibate order, the Velici are, but, they can't be helped, and, they try to coax her, and this may not work with this situation, but she doesn't see how. And Sorak is does care for her and wishes he could. The problem is that some of his personalities can't do it. Some of them are female, and they don't swing that way. So that creates a problem. after that awkwardness, she sort of, she leaves and tries to seclude herself, meditation. And that's when Sorak decides to leave. See, in the course of his training, Sorak has no memory of his past before he was picked up. And he wants to find out about himself. Where did he come from? How is it that his parents, being an elf and a halfling, produce him that are bitter enemies? So he comes to the village elders and says, okay, I think my time here is done. I've learned all of what I can. I need to find out about myself. And so the Velici elder tells him, okay, probably the only person powerful enough to do this is the sage. The sage who has hidden himself because he is on his way becoming an Navigian. And he has to hide himself so the other sorcerer kings do not find him and try to destroy him before his metamorphosis is finished. But he's maybe powerful enough to delve into his past and find out about him. It's going to take a series of quests just to accomplish this. So to send him on his way, she gives him certain scrolls. She tells, in order to find a sage, probably the first thing he can do is find a Pyrene who found him in the first place and see what she knows, and go on from there. But before he leaves, he's given a very special blade. It was a blade called Galdra. That if a person is noble of heart and everything, this blade cannot be broken. In fact, it breaks every blade that comes across. Most blades on Athasir are made of obsidian or flint or bone, and if you're wealthy enough, you can find one made of steel, but Galdra can break any of those without that. His Tygon cub that was with him in the beginning is now grown up and and follows him through and through. Normally dangerous animals, but they now share a psychic link when since they were found, that they become inseparable, and tends to obey his commands very nicely. Alright, so in the course of this, so he's now on his way. He leaves quietly, so Rihanna doesn't, know about it. And now he finds the Pyrene. Pyrene says, we can go back to. I can't even find a place where I found you, so it's hard to look there. But you might want to look for the Veiled Alliance in Tyr. They may have, certain information that will lead you to the Sage. So now he's on his way. And as he goes, on his quest, right before he hits Tyr, he confronts a group of marauders just outside it. He finds out there's this huge plan to attack a trade caravan that will devastate the economy. So he comes in and informs the local council, which the council consists of characters from the Prison Pentad. So if you've read the Prison Pentad, you'll be familiar with this, particularly Rikus, former gladiator, and Sidira, who is a wizard herself. But also becomes the main villain of this book. His name is Timur, who is a Templar. Templars are are enforcers of the Sorcerer Kings. They are the ones who enforce, they for all intents and purposes are kind of like clerics. They had their clerical magic absorbed from the Sorcerer Kings that ruled the city, and they were they enforced all the laws, very much feared. But since Calyx, the previous Sorcerer King, was destroyed in Prison Pentad series, they don't have that type of magical power anymore. But they still run the city, they still try to do what they can to cities, and Timur is one of those that's saying, hey, look, we were just as much victims as any of you guys. We're trying to do our best to, run the city, without it. Now, Timur, as I say, he's the main villain of this, and as Sorak, it informs him of the raiders that's, coming in. This leads to a series of events that, Timur may see Sorak as a possible threat, and Sorak has to do what he can to find whatever he can of the Veiled Alliance, so he may continue on his quest. And throughout this book, somebody seems to be following him and helping him out on occasion. Whoever that is, you'll find out at the end. And interesting thing about this book was that as Sorak is, he stays in a little bit in the Warrens, which is the slums, and he finds work in a casino where he uses his psychic abilities to find cheats and all that. And in that, there's this game that they wager where the dice that they use are the typical role-playing game dice, the 4-sided dice, the 6-sided, and on up to D20. And there's wagers involving rolling the dice to get a higher score. And I found that very amusing that they did this just so they can throw in a role-playing. It's almost meta, but it gets more so by the third book, and I'll get to that when I get to that video. So, will Sorak is Sorak's information credible? Do they, who trusts him? This guy who just comes out of nowhere with a Tygon, which is a dangerous animal nobody wants to deal with. Does, Timur figure him out, and does he try, can he try to destroy him wherever he can? Who's this mysterious figure that keeps helping him out? And, will Sorak find a veiled alliance to help him on his quest? Well, I won't give into too much details any much further. I've already explained enough, but The Outcast by Simon Hawke, first book of the Tribe 1 trilogy, and that'll be it for this review, and thank you all for watching. Have a nice day.